Everyone, welcome to the new video. So this video is regarding AWS IAM and all the terms related to IAM we'll try to cover in this video and clear the confusion that mostly we have. So without further ado, let's go. So we will try to cover in this video what is IAM user, roles, policies, identity provider, and every IAM term. So, in order that the confusion that we face that is all clear. So, what IAM is, what IAM users, what is IAM groups, what is IAM roles, what is IAM policies, identity providers, federation, permission, trust policy, access key versus passwords, MFA, best practice, and common confusion between all these terms. So, what is IAM? IAM stand for Identity and Access Management. So, in the simple words, IAM decide who can log in, authentication, and what they can do. So, with login, what all permissions they have, authorization. So, IAM is a global AWS service. Okay, so it is checked globally on all the AWS regions that we have. So, what is authentication? What is authorization if we go deeper? Authentication is verifying the identity. Example, the username and password, or the access key, or the MFA. And authorization is that after you log in using user and password, what all actions you are allowed to do. That whether you are able to access the EC2 instance, or whether you are able to create it or not, or you can delete S3 bucket, all this comes in authorization. Then we have IAM root user also. So when we create a AWS account, a very fresh account for the first time, we will get a root user. But that root user is never uh, recommended to use further, because that root user has full access to everything, uses email and password, and should not be used daily. So best practice is enable MFA, okay, and create an IAM admin user. Never recommend to use root user and stop using root. Now, what is IAM users? And IAM users represents a single person or an application that need access to AWS. Example, a developer or admin or a CI/CD system like Jenkins or GitHub. Okay, so IAM user can have password for AWS console, or for CLI or programmatic access they can have access key. Okay, so IAM user is a single person or application. Now access key is equal to used for API or CLI access. So we will have a ID, access key ID, and a secret access key. Two things that will be required. Either you will have username or password with MFA enabled, or you will have access key ID or secret access key. What are IAM groups? So instead of assigning permission to users one by one, we use groups. So if there are, suppose we have to give access to developers, we'll create a developer group and we'll add all developers in that group, so that all the permissions which are required to be given to the developers, if we add in the group, it applies to all the developers. We don't have to do it one by one. Similarly, we will have admin group, we will have QA group. So we'll attach the policies to the group, and we don't have to do it for each user. So all users inside the group inherit permissions. So users go inside groups, and groups cannot contain other groups. Okay, groups cannot log in. Users go inside the groups, and groups inside the group we cannot have another group, and groups cannot log in. It is the user who will log in. Now, what is IAM policies that we are attaching to the group? We saw attaching policies to the group. So policies define permission. A policy is a JSON document which will have effect, action, resource. Effect will have allowed in a action what operation, and resource means on which resource. Allow S3 read access. Okay. Now, what are type of IAM policies? So we have managed policies, we have inline policies. Managed policies are also of two types. One is managed by you and one is managed by AWS. So there are two types of policy: AWS managed policy and customer managed policy. And these are reusable. Inline policies are attached directly to one user or group or role, and they are not reusable. Okay, so there are two types of policy: managed and inline, where inline is directly attached to user, group or role, while managed are reusable, and they are also AWS managed and customer managed. Now, what is IAM roles? A role is similar to a user, but it does not have password or access key. Instead, it is assumed temporarily. Like you assume a role of something. Okay, like user, if you are a developer and you are given, so I am user is like you're a developer and your user ID is created and you will have all the developer role access. But roles are like, there are roles created for developer and you are not developer, but for some time you need the access of developer, what developers are performing. So instead of creating an IAM user, what you will do, you will assume that role of developer so that you get the access what developers have, and after some time, that when that time period is gone, you will lose access. So those are temporary and those can be assumed temporarily, and those are also secure. For security purpose, we see those are more secure. Okay, so what does assume a role means? It means an entity temporarily gets permission of that role. Who can assume a role? A IAM user or a AWS services like EC2, Lambda, or another AWS account or identity provider use. These all people can assume a role. So example one, like EC2 role, if EC2 needs to access S3, you create a role, attach S3 policy, okay, attach role to EC2, and EC2 automatically gets temporary credentials. No need to store access key inside server. So you will create a role for EC2, you'll attach S3 policy to that role, so that role have a access of S3, and then you'll attach that role to EC2. Now if you say example 2 is cross account rule, now account A wants to access account B S3, so account B creates role. Now add trust policy allowing account A. Now account A assume role. Okay, because we have to access account B S3, so role will be created in account B, and trust policy needs to be created with account A, and then account A assume that role and it will get secure cross account access. So trust policy versus permission policy. Trust policy is that who can assume the role, that account A can assume this role, there is a trust built, it's fine. If account is trying to access account B, it's fine. Permission policy is what they can do after assuming role. Okay, so after assuming role, they can only access account B S3, nothing else. So that is permission policy. Trust is that they can assume that role, and permission is what after assuming the role what they can perform. Now IAM identity provider. An identity provider allows user outside AWS to access AWS. Okay. Now company use AD, Active Directory, Google Login, Azure AD. These are kind of identity provider. So instead of creating IAM user for everyone, you connect AWS with identity provider. Okay. So we'll create identity provider allow user outside AWS you will not have user created IAM user created in AWS, but because the identity provider is created, that will allow user to access AWS. Okay, federation means user authenticate outside AWS but get temporary access to AWS. Now, types of identity providers in AWS are SAML 2.0, OpenID Connect, Cognito, and external corporate. So, we have seen types of identity providers in AWS, and these are the IAM identity provider. Okay, IDP, and this is identity providers in AWS. So in AWS we have AWS Cognito. Cognito is used mostly for applications. So you have built a mobile app, and instead of creating IAM user sign in via Facebook or Google or email and password. So Cognito handles identity and gives temporary AWS access. So identity provider is like they will handle the identity instead of creating IAM users in AWS. Identity providers will do handle the identities or user accounts. It's just that with those identities we are able to access AWS for temporary or for for our use. So temporary credentials, roles and federations, these are just used for temporary credentials. Why? More secure, they expire automatically and generated by AWS STS means security token service. After some time they expire automatically. So mostly roles and federations are more secure way to authenticate or to log in. Now IAM permission boundaries. Permission boundary sets maximum permission limit for a user or role. So even if policy allows more, boundary restricted. So this is used in large organization. Even we have SCP service control policy. So even if IAM allows something, but that is restricted in at service SCP level, then SCP policy what you say overrule. So hierarchy is whatever is blocked in SCP, even though if it is allowed in IAM, user won't be able to access that thing. Now IAM access analyzer helps detect public access, cross account access, security auditing tool. Okay. Now MFA is like a extra security layer where you have a password, then you have a OTP from mobile app. So strongly recommended for root user or admin user. We have already seen so many times that in GitHub also it is there. We have MFA enabled. So IAM best practices: never use root daily, enable MFA, use role instead of access key, use groups, follow least privilege principle, rotate key, use temporary credential, avoid inline policy. Now, common confusions are that what is user versus role? User is permanent identity, role is temporary identity. Group versus role is collection of user, and role is assumed identity. Policy versus role is policy is permission document, role is an identifier that has policies. Identity provider versus IAM user created inside AWS, IDP user authenticated outside AWS. Real world architecture example like company setup employees login using Azure AD, but they are able to access AWS because of federation, or you can say identity provider is Azure AD. Then we have admin role, developer role, EC2 role for services, SAP for account control, and MFA enforce. This is enterprise IAM design. So this I have given so that if you get some idea that how it works in real world. Then we have final summary. We have IAM, who are you, authentication, what can you do, authorization. Main components are root user, IAM user, groups, roles, policy, identity provider, federation, STS, secure, okay, SCP, and permission boundary. So we are done with this. I hope things are clear to you, and all the terms related to IM are clear to you. Even if something still you have doubts, please comment down. So yeah, so that's it for today's video. I hope it's helpful. Please let me know your views in the comment section. Till then, take care. Bye.